You want to change your life? You want to rise above average? Then listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you, most people will never understand. Momentum, real momentum, is the secret weapon of winners. And let me tell you, once you have it, everything changes. You stop begging, you stop apologizing, you stop explaining yourself to people who don't even believe in themselves. You become a force, and nothing can stop a force that refuses to break. Now let's get something clear. Momentum doesn't come to you. It doesn't knock on your door. It doesn't show up because you prayed for it or posted a quote about it. Momentum comes when you move. That's right. When you act with boldness, with certainty, with fire. Every empire was built by people who didn't wait for perfect timing. They created it. And when you step out in purpose, real purpose, you create something divine, motion that cannot be reversed. And let me tell you, emotional detachment, people don't talk about this enough, is one of the highest levels of strength. When you're not attached to how people see you, what they say about you, how the world reacts to you, that's when you become powerful. Because now you're not living for approval, you're living for assignment. When you're not worried about applause, you start hearing direction. That's when heaven starts speaking. That's when momentum becomes spiritual. You can't let your feelings run the show. You can't. Because feelings are temporary, but purpose is eternal. If you let your feelings drive you, you'll stop at every little disappointment. But if you let vision drive you, you'll run through fire, you'll walk through storms, and you'll still come out standing taller than ever. That's momentum. It's not just forward motion, it's unbreakable motion. People say, what if I fail? I say, what if you never even try? Failure is not losing. Failure is staying still. Stagnation is the graveyard of potential. And the truth is, most people aren't afraid of failing. They're afraid of being seen starting small. But the greats start anyway. And they keep moving even when no one claps, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts. That's when momentum starts to build. That's when heaven starts leaning in. You know what separates the strong from the weak? The strong don't need outcomes to be peaceful. Think about that. They're detached from noise, from praise, from criticism, because they've locked into calling. When you're led by calling, you don't chase moments, you build movement. You don't look for shortcuts, you build foundations. And when storms come, and they always do, the one with momentum, spiritual momentum, never falls. You've got to stop hesitating, stop calculating every step like your life is a math problem. Life is not math, it's war. And in war, hesitation gets you killed. You must move with clarity, with conviction, with full belief that the mission is bigger than the mess. When you move with that kind of boldness, people notice, heaven notices, even hell notices and gets nervous, because now you're not a spectator, you're a disruptor. Look, the moment you decide you're no longer a slave to how you feel, the game changes. You stop being reactive and start becoming strategic. You stop letting people's opinions sway your direction. You stop handing over your authority to those who never built anything themselves. You become rooted, grounded. You move like someone who's been called. And when you move like that, doors open. Not because of luck, but because momentum bends the world in your favor. And understand this, momentum doesn't mean you'll always feel good. It means you'll always be moving, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if nobody sees it yet, because forward is forward. And what starts as a whisper becomes a roar if you don't stop. Most people fail because they quit too soon. But when you keep moving, even when it's hard, you grow into the kind of person who cannot be stopped. So here's what I need you to do. Kill the excuses, destroy the doubts, let go of needing comfort, and detach from the need for instant reward. That's weakness. That's noise. You weren't built for comfort. You were built for conquest. And momentum belongs to the conquerors. Because once you get momentum, once you build it with discipline, purpose, and detachment, you become unstoppable. Momentum is created through decisive action, not endless thinking. You can plan all day. You can talk about your dreams. You can sit in rooms discussing strategies and timing. But until you take the first step, nothing changes. Thinking doesn't move the world. Action does. The people who get ahead in life are not always the smartest or the most experienced or even the most talented. They're the ones who move while others are still deciding, still hesitating, still researching and worrying and doubting. The one who acts already owns the fear. Every second you spend stuck in indecision is a second you surrender to fear, and fear loves a still man. Fear feeds on delay. It thrives in hesitation. But the moment you act, truly act, it starts to retreat. It starts to crumble. You don't break through by sitting still. You break through by moving when it's uncomfortable, when it's scary, when it's unclear. That's where power is born. That's where real fire gets lit. The people wait for perfect conditions, but the truth is, perfection is an illusion used by cowards to justify doing nothing. If you wait for the stars to align, you will die with your dreams still buried inside you. But if you act now, with faith, with focus, even in uncertainty, you activate something bigger than you. Action creates clarity. You don't get clarity before you move. You get it because you move. You discover what works, what doesn't, what's real and what's not, only when you're in motion. Overthinking is the silent assassin of momentum. It paralyzes great men. It builds prisons in the mind. You can think so long that you convince yourself out of the very thing you were born to do. You start hearing the wrong voices, doubt, insecurity, fear of judgment. Every second you entertain those voices, you lose ground. But when you act, you silence them. Action drowns out fear. It breaks chains. It ignites energy, and that energy builds upon itself. One step becomes two, two becomes five, and soon you're not just walking, you're running. That's how momentum is created. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's movement stacked with courage. You'll always have reasons to wait. You'll always find excuses if you're looking for them. But the ones who win in life are those who decide not tomorrow, but now. They don't wait to feel ready. They act, and by acting, they become ready. That's how kings rise. That's how empires are born. Momentum belongs to the bold. And boldness is not the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear dictate the pace of your life. If you want to change your future, you have to take the first step, then the next, then the next. And you do it without needing applause, without needing permission, without needing a guarantee. Because in that motion, something awakens, something divine, and that is the power that separates dreamers from doers and thinkers from builders. Emotional detachment is power. When you are no longer controlled by how you feel, in every moment you become dangerous in the best way. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They move only when they feel inspired, they quit when they feel discouraged, they lash out when they feel offended, and they hide when they feel afraid. That's not strength. That's instability. And instability never builds greatness. True power begins the moment you decide that your emotions will serve your mission, not sabotage it. Because when you're ruled by emotion, you're not in control, you're owned. And anything that owns you can ruin you. Look at the strongest, most effective people in history. They weren't emotional reactors. They were focused executors. They didn't collapse every time things got hard. They didn't cry over criticism or crumble under pressure. They moved forward because their inner compass wasn't tied to feelings. It was anchored in vision. They knew the mission. And when you know your mission, you don't have time to entertain every feeling that passes through your heart. Feelings are temporary. Purpose is permanent. When you detach emotionally, you don't become cold. You become clear. You're no longer tossed around by moods or swayed by opinions. You think sharp. You act strong. You keep moving forward when others freeze. Emotional detachment isn't about not caring. It's about not folding. It's about standing in the middle of chaos and choosing not to flinch. You'll get criticized. People will misunderstand you. You'll lose friends. You'll hear lies. But when your emotions don't drive your decisions, your enemies lose their weapons. They can throw dirt, but you don't respond with weakness. You respond with progress. That's power. That's maturity. That's momentum. And momentum doesn't come to those who cry over every setback. It comes to those who stand up, shake the dust off, and keep charging. When you master emotional detachment, people notice they can't provoke you. They can't bait you. They can't throw you off your center. And they respect it even if they don't say it. Why? Because they see something rare. A person who doesn't need constant reassurance. A person who doesn't explode under pressure. A person who moves like they've already won. That confidence is magnetic. That steadiness is leadership. And that leadership starts the moment you stop letting your emotions decide your future. It doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means your feelings don't decide everything. You may feel discouraged, but you still show up. You may feel hurt, but you still stay focused. You may feel fear, but you still take the step. That is strength. That is power. That is the mark of someone who's going to finish what they started. Because when you live above your emotions, you live above the noise. You see things others miss. You make decisions others can't. And you become the kind of person who leads movements, not the kind who gets lost in the moment. Momentum destroys resistance. The moment you start moving, truly moving with purpose, everything that once stood in your way begins to lose its grip. The walls that looked unbreakable begin to shake. The fear that once held you captive starts to shrink. The doubts that once screamed now whisper. Because momentum has a force of its own. It carries weight, speed, authority. It changes the atmosphere. It doesn't just push forward, it pushes through. Resistance cannot survive against a man who refuses to stop. Understand this, resistance only has power over those who are still. When you're standing still, everything looks bigger than it is. Every problem looks like a mountain. Every obstacle feels permanent. But once you begin to move, once you take action and keep taking it, resistance begins to weaken. Not because the challenges become smaller, but because you become stronger. Motion increases strength. Progress builds power, and that power breaks the grip of resistance. One committed step forward is louder than 100 perfect plans. And when you keep stepping, when you build that daily momentum, resistance becomes nothing more than background noise. Most people never taste victory because they freeze at the first sign of resistance. They think resistance means something is wrong, but resistance is confirmation. It proves you're pushing into territory that matters. Nobody resists the man standing still, only the one who's advancing. Don't run from resistance. Run through it. You don't negotiate with it. You don't explain yourself to it. You don't wait for it to leave. You move, you act, you press forward with such consistency that resistance stops trying. Because momentum sends a signal, this one can't be stopped. Momentum makes it hard for doubt to catch up. When you're moving fast, fear can't sit with you. The voices that once distracted you can't keep up anymore. Why? Because you're moving too fast, too focused, too committed. Momentum makes you dangerous to every limitation that ever tried to define you. The old you, the overthinker, the procrastinator, the one who waited for approval, is left in the dust. And in its place is a warrior who understands that pressure is not the enemy. Stagnation is every small act, every consistent decision, every disciplined moment builds momentum. And that momentum builds pressure, not on you, but on the walls that were meant to stop you. Eventually they break. Eventually the critics get tired. Eventually the fear that once kept you up at night can't even look you in the eye because you didn't stop. You didn't flinch. You moved when it was hard. You moved when it was quiet. You moved when nobody clapped. And now resistance is crushed, not because it disappeared, but because it never had the power to stop someone who kept going. Momentum is the weapon. It is the advantage. It is the signal that you have chosen power over paralysis. And once you taste it, once you understand what it does to every wall in your way, you'll never sit still again. Purpose is the fuel of momentum. Without it, movement becomes meaningless, and even small obstacles feel like mountains. But when you are driven by purpose, real clear, undeniable purpose, nothing can hold you back. You wake up with fire, you walk with direction, you endure what others collapse under, because you're not just moving for applause or approval, you're moving for something bigger, something eternal. That's what separates the average from the extraordinary. Purpose doesn't just give you speed, it gives you sustainability. It keeps you going when motivation dies, when the excitement fades, when the noise quiets down. If you don't know where you're going, every delay feels like the end. But when you have purpose, delays don't shake you. They prepare you. You start to understand that every step, even the painful ones, are part of the assignment. You stop reacting to emotions and start responding to destiny. Purpose gives your movement meaning. It gives your trials context. It tells your pain to submit because there is work to be done. And when pain bows to purpose, momentum becomes unstoppable. You'll never build lasting momentum chasing trends or applause because those things fade. One moment you're celebrated, the next you're criticized. If your fire depends on being praised, your fire will die. But if your fire comes from purpose, it will burn in silence, in storms, in valleys. Purpose allows you to keep going when nobody understands you, when you're laughed at, when you're underestimated, because you don't need them to see it. You just need to keep walking. The path is yours. The calling is yours. And momentum belongs to those who stay faithful to what they were called to build. When you know your purpose, distractions lose their power. You stop being pulled in 1,000 directions. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You start making sharper decisions. You move differently. People can feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they'll say, there's something about him. He moves with certainty. That's what purpose does. It eliminates confusion. It replaces hesitation with action. It silences doubt with direction. Without purpose, success becomes empty. You might have motion, but you won't have meaning. You might achieve goals, but you won't feel fulfilled. That's why so many people with status still feel stuck, because momentum without purpose is just movement without peace. It's noise, it's chaos. But when your momentum is tied to a higher assignment, every step carries weight. Every win matters. Every failure teaches, because it's all building something beyond you. Purpose doesn't make the journey easy, but it makes it worth it. You'll bleed for it, you'll sacrifice for it, but you'll never regret it. And that's why momentum fueled by purpose is so dangerous. It won't stop. It doesn't quit. It doesn't bow. It doesn't need a perfect path. It just needs the courage to keep going, because it already knows the destination is greater than the difficulty. Spiritual detachment is the discipline of kings. When you can walk away from anything that threatens your peace, your vision, or your divine assignment, you become untouchable, not because you're cold, not because you don't care, but because you know what you carry is too important to be entangled in things that don't matter. That kind of clarity is rare, it's powerful, and it's what separates those who lead from those who chase. Most people are chained to outcome. They're ruled by results. If things go their way, they're confident. If they don't, they fall apart. But the king doesn't bend with the wind. He stands rooted in something higher: purpose, identity, and divine direction. Spiritual detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't fold. You don't sell your peace for applause. You don't trade your assignment for validation. You don't chase every opportunity that waves in front of you, because you understand that not everything is for you. And because you know what's yours can't be taken, you move without desperation. You lead with calm. That's authority. That's what changes atmospheres. Not noise, not hustle, but quiet strength anchored in something unshakable. The world will always try to bait you into arguments, into ego battles, into pointless distractions. But when you're spiritually detached, you don't respond to noise. You respond to vision. You're not triggered by offense. You're not driven by emotion. You're led by truth. And that truth tells you who you are, why you're here, and what you're meant to build. That's why the spiritually detached don't panic when things go wrong. They know pressure doesn't kill them. It shapes them. They know delay doesn't deny them. It prepares them. And they know that walking away from the wrong thing is never loss. It's protection. People will call you heartless. They'll call you too intense, but that's only because they don't understand how much discipline it takes to stay focused when everything in the world is screaming for your attention. Detachment is not weakness. It's the highest form of control. When you can sit in chaos and remain calm, when you can lose what others worship and still stand tall, you become a force. That's when the enemy gets nervous, because he can't manipulate someone who doesn't crave what he's offering. You can't be bought. You can't be baited. You can't be broken. And that's why kings rule with detachment, because you can't build a legacy if you're attached to every comment, every feeling, every temporary success or failure. You have to see beyond the moment. You have to stay loyal to the mission. And that loyalty requires sacrifice. It requires letting go, not just of what's bad, but sometimes of what looks good but isn't right. And in that letting go, you gain something far greater: dominion over your thoughts, your emotions, your direction. That's not just discipline, that's destiny. That's spiritual sovereignty. And from that place, you don't just survive, you reign. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is clarity. When you know exactly who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, you don't need to raise your voice, beg for attention, or convince anyone. You simply move, and the world takes notice. The problem is too many people confuse confidence with ego, when in truth, confidence is rooted in awareness. It's the deep, unshakable knowing that you are aligned with something greater than yourself. And when you move from that place, you don't just walk into a room, you shift the atmosphere. Confidence doesn't look like loud words or boastful claims. It looks like consistency. It looks like a calm presence in chaos. It looks like unwavering motion in the face of resistance. Arrogance talks. Confidence acts. Confidence doesn't wait for applause to believe in its value. It doesn't depend on external validation because the internal compass is already locked in. When a person has clarity, they don't seek permission. They don't fear rejection. They simply move forward because they already know where they're going. And that kind of motion builds momentum fast because it's not burdened by insecurity or indecision. You can tell when someone's operating in true confidence and they're not in a hurry to prove themselves. They're not rattled by criticism or slowed down by praise. They stay centered. Why? Because they're not performing. They're aligned. That clarity gives them a stability that others admire, even if they don't understand it. And that's why confidence is such a threat to weak systems, to small minds, and to insecure environments. It exposes what's real. It makes excuses disappear. It shows what's possible when someone decides to stop second guessing and starts executing. Confidence comes from doing the work, from showing up when it's hard, from keeping your word when no one's watching. It's not fake hype, it's earned. You earn it in the dark, in the quiet places, in the moments when quitting would be easy, but you keep going anyway. And that's why confident people carry something heavy in their presence. You feel their journey, you feel the price they've paid, and it demands respect, not because they demand it, but because they embody it. Clarity sharpens your focus. It eliminates distraction. When you're clear on who you are and what matters, you don't chase everything that moves. You choose, you decide, you lead. And that's why confidence accelerates momentum, because every step you take is intentional. Every decision is strategic. There's no wasted motion, no scattered energy, just forward progress with precision. When you confuse confidence for arrogance, you miss the beauty of clarity. You miss the depth of self-trust that comes from knowing your calling, and you miss the power of a person who has stopped apologizing for walking in it. Confidence is not pride, it's peace. The peace of knowing that you were made for this, and no matter what rises against you, your feet are planted, your eyes are set, and your direction is divine. Delay is the greatest enemy of momentum. Every second you spend waiting for the right time is a second you give away to fear, doubt, and distraction. Most people don't fail because they didn't have what it takes. They fail because they waited too long to act. They waited for the perfect conditions, the right words, the ideal moment, not realizing that greatness is never born in perfection. It's born in motion. Delay kills more dreams than failure ever could. Because when you delay, you stop the fire before it even starts. You silence the momentum before it has a chance to roar. The truth is, delay feels safe. It disguises itself as wisdom, as preparation, as caution. But most of the time, it's just fear in disguise. Fear of being seen, starting small. Fear of rejection. Fear of falling short. And that fear convinces you that waiting is wise, when really it's costing you everything. Because the longer you wait, the more doubt grows, the more your courage fades, the more your vision blurs. Delay is not neutral, it is a thief. It robs you of energy, confidence, clarity, and direction. And the longer you sit still, the harder it becomes to move. Not because you can't, but because hesitation has made you forget how powerful you are when you act. Momentum only begins with motion. Not perfect motion, just motion. A step, a word, a decision. But delay keeps you in your head. It makes you overthink. It makes you analyze until you're paralyzed. You talk yourself out of what was once burning in your heart. You look back and wonder what would have happened if you had just moved. And the worst part is delay always feels justified in the moment. You can always find a reason to wait, but those reasons become regrets. And regret is a heavy weight to carry. You weren't created to stay still. You were created to advance, to build, to multiply what's in your hands. But you can't multiply what you haven't moved with. and you can't gain ground when you're standing still. Delay tells you there's time. Momentum tells you that time is now. Delay tells you to think more. Momentum tells you to act. Delay is the lie. Momentum is the truth. And every time you choose to wait, you choose to trade power for comfort. But comfort never produces greatness. Only urgency does. You can prepare, you can plan, but if you never pull the trigger, the plan dies with you. Some doors only open when you move toward them. Some strength only shows up when you step into the unknown. Delay keeps you on the outside wishing, but momentum invites you into the fight. The breakthrough comes when you decide you've waited long enough. The moment you stop postponing and start pursuing, everything changes because momentum honors action. And once you commit to movement, delay loses its voice, fear loses its grip, and destiny starts speeding toward you. You don't lose momentum, you surrender it. Momentum isn't something that disappears on its own. It doesn't evaporate. It doesn't run from you. It's something you either maintain through consistent purpose-driven action or something you willingly hand over when you hesitate, complain, procrastinate, or choose comfort over calling. That's the truth most people avoid because it's easier to blame circumstances, people, or timing than to admit the power was in their hands the whole time. Momentum isn't stolen. It's surrendered by choice, one small compromise at a time. You build momentum through effort, focus, and discipline. But just as quickly, you can lose it by making excuses, chasing distractions, or quitting when things get uncomfortable. It doesn't vanish in a single blow. It slips away gradually as you begin to accept less from yourself. The moment you stop pressing forward, even just for a short while, you're not just pausing, you're stepping backward because the world doesn't pause. Life doesn't wait. The mission keeps moving and the opportunities that were once within reach begin to drift when you stop moving. People say, I just lost my momentum as if it were a mystery, something that happened to them. But the truth is, they gave it up. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was fatigue. Maybe it was the seduction of comfort. But make no mistake, it was a decision. Momentum doesn't ask for perfection, but it demands persistence. It rewards those who show up even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. And when you stop showing up, when you stop acting, you hand over the very thing you worked so hard to build. The most dangerous part about surrendering momentum is that it doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels like rest. Sometimes it feels like a well-earned break. And while rest has its place, the line between rest and retreat is thin. But one day off becomes two. Two becomes a week becomes a month. And suddenly the fire is cold, the edge is gone, the energy you once had, the drive that used to push you forward, it's faded. Not because it was taken from you, but because you laid it down. Momentum is your responsibility, it's your rhythm, it's your battle to protect. And if you want to be great, if you want to fulfill your calling, you have to guard it like treasure. You have to keep pushing when others stall, keep showing up when others tap out, keep building when the applause stops. Because the world won't hand you power, you have to earn it and then keep it through consistency. Every time you stay disciplined, every time you choose to act, instead of wait, you reclaim authority over your momentum. You didn't lose it, you let it go. But the good news is this, if you had the power to surrender it, you have the power to take it back. All it takes is one decision to rise, one step in the right direction, and the momentum that once carried you will return, not as a whisper, but as a roar. The world respects the one who keeps moving forward regardless of the noise. There is something undeniably powerful about a person who refuses to stop, no matter how loud the critics become, no matter how intense the distractions grow, no matter how heavy the pressure gets. In a world filled with people seeking approval, applause, and external validation, the one who moves forward with silent conviction stands out. They don't need the crowd to cheer. They don't need permission to act. They just keep going, and because they do, they earn a level of respect that noise chasers never receive. People are watching you, even when you think they're not. They're watching how you respond to failure, how you carry yourself when your name is being questioned, how you keep building when everything around you feels uncertain. And when they see that you don't flinch, when they see that your momentum doesn't stop even under pressure, they start to respect you. Even your enemies take notice. They may not admit it. They may still talk. But deep down, they know they're witnessing something rare, someone who can't be moved by opinions because they are anchored by purpose. The noise will always be there. The doubters, the critics, the opinions of people who've never built anything of value themselves. They'll talk, they'll question you, they'll try to slow you down with their words, their silence, their resistance. But that noise only has power if you stop to listen. Every time you respond to nonsense, you slow your pace. Every time you try to explain your calling to people not assigned to it, you burn energy you need for the mission. And that's the trap, to be so distracted by trying to be understood that you forget to move. Momentum is built in quiet obedience. It's forged in private commitment. And the world respects the one who doesn't flinch in the face of judgment, but instead keeps doing the work, keeps building the vision, keeps showing up when it would be easier to fade into the background. That kind of consistency demands respect, not because you're louder, not because you're more talented, but because you're relentless. And there's something about relentlessness that even the proudest voices can't deny. In the end, people may not agree with you, but they will respect the fact that you didn't break, that you didn't stop, that you didn't let their noise become your ceiling. Because when you move forward, without responding to every distraction, you teach the world something. Your vision is louder than their volume. Your discipline is stronger than their doubt. And your forward motion speaks a language that noise can't touch. Keep moving, not for applause, not to prove a point, but because forward is who you are now. And in a world addicted to attention, the one who walks with quiet fire becomes unforgettable. That's how you rise. Not through noise, but through unstoppable, undeniable motion that commands respect without ever needing to demand it. Greatness doesn't chase applause. It builds legacy through momentum. The truly great are not the ones who wait to be noticed, celebrated, or validated. They are the ones who commit to the work, who stay consistent in the shadows, and who build day by day even when no one is watching. Applause is fleeting. It rises and falls with trends, with moods, with public opinion. But legacy, real lasting impact, is built by momentum that never stops. It's not about loud moments, it's about sustained action, steady, purpose-driven, disciplined movement that doesn't require attention to continue. The ones who chase applause often burn out fast. They need the energy of praise to keep going. They depend on people's opinions to fuel their next move. And when the crowd stops clapping, so do they. But the ones who build legacy understand something deeper. Applause is a byproduct, not a foundation. You don't build empires on compliments. You build them on commitment, on showing up, on choosing mission over noise, because applause can trick you into thinking you've arrived when there's still more to be done. But momentum tells the truth. It reminds you that greatness is not a moment, it's a lifestyle. Every step matters when you're building legacy. Every decision becomes a seed. And momentum ensures that those seeds grow, that the work compounds, that every act of faith, every day of discipline carries you further. People may not see the progress right away. They may not understand why you keep showing up with the same energy, the same fire, the same focus. But momentum doesn't need an audience. It needs only commitment. And that commitment becomes a force. It becomes a current that carries you into places applause could never take you. Legacy is not built overnight. It is the result of years of momentum built in silence with resilience. It is forged in moments of exhaustion and seasons of doubt and battles with fear, and still you keep going. Because something inside you knows that what you're building isn't temporary. It's eternal. You're not just making noise, you're making history. And history doesn't remember who got the most cheers. It remembers who didn't stop, who kept building when it wasn't easy, who stayed the course when others faded. The greatest builders, the ones who leave their mark, are the ones who refuse to slow down just to be liked. They didn't chase attention, they chased assignment. And in doing so, they became immovable. That's the power of momentum. It separates the one-hit wonders from the timeless leaders. It turns effort into legacy. It turns moments into movements. And once that kind of motion begins, it doesn't matter who's watching. It only matters that you don't stop. Because applause may come and go, but legacy stands forever. And legacy belongs to those who keep moving, no matter how quiet the room becomes. So here's what you need to understand and never forget. Momentum is not given. It is claimed. It is earned by those who refuse to sit still, who reject excuses, who rise when it's easier to rest, who walk with a fire that no man, no fear, no setback can extinguish. Momentum is built by the bold, sustained by the disciplined, and protected by the unwavering. It is not something you borrow from the world. It is something you generate from within. And once you taste that power, once you feel yourself moving with purpose, with spiritual detachment, with emotional control, with divine clarity, you will never go back to living like everyone else. You were not made to crawl through life waiting for applause. You were made to advance, to dominate, to build, and to leave a mark. You were designed to rise again and again and again until nothing can stop you but the hand of God himself calling you home. So move. And keep moving. Don't pause for doubt. Don't slow down for critics. Don't surrender your fire to feelings. Walk in the momentum of your calling and let the world adjust to the sound of your footsteps. Because the world doesn't change when you arrive. It changes because you refuse to stop.